Hi, welcome to Overthinking Entrepreneur. I'm Megan, and I've had a successful online business for a few years now, and I think I overthought probably about 90% of my decisions along the way. Honestly, I just overthought whether I should say 90% or pretty much every decision in this intro. So if you find that relatable, you are definitely in the right place. In this podcast, I will help you get out of overthinking and into action so that your online business can finally start growing. Is there a best time to post on social media? I got this question today, and I have gotten this question many times over the years, and I thought it would be a great topic for a podcast episode because it's not one of those questions that has a super simple, straightforward answer, but I do have some things that I just want to kind of explain to you how I decide what the best times to post are so that you can then kind of make your own decision and figure out what's going to work best for you. So the first thing I want you to know is that there really is no one best time. You can Google, and there are companies that have kind of looked at across the board where are the busiest times on social media. And so you can look those up and you can totally try them out and see if they work for you, and they might. They're kind of averages. So for a lot of people, they probably work really well, but they're just not going to work for everyone. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. What matters most is when your audience is active, and not every audience is the same. It depends on what your people have going on. It depends, do they work full time? Are they retired? Are they a student? Do they have young kids? Do they have to get up super early? Do they work night shift, right? Like there's so many different things that can factor into when someone is going to be active on social media. And so you can think a little bit about what you think is likely to be true for your audience. Like if, for example, let's say that you are a stay-at-home mom and you tend to connect with a lot of other stay-at-home moms, well, then you might be able to get away with doing some things during the day because they're not at work, but it depends on, what age their kids are and what time their kids wake up and all of that stuff. So then that still gets tricky, but if most of your people work full-time and you're trying to start doing a weekly 10 a.m. live and it's just not taking off, well, yeah, it's not taking off because your people are at work every single week at that time. They're never going to be able to come. So I think that you have to just sort of get to know your audience as best you can and understand that even within your audience, there's never going to be a perfect time. Trust me on this one. I know this better than anyone because I do a lot of group Zoom calls and, group trainings and things. And sometimes I just pick the time that works best for me, but a lot of times I will try and do a poll and let people vote on which times work and go with the time that works for the most people. It's pretty much never a nice, clean, easy answer where the same time works for everyone. Even within my audience of people that are all paying customers of mine who all happily want to work with me, they're all over the board in terms of what time they're available. Some of them work, some of them don't. Some of them have hobbies that they do during the day and evening is better. Some of them, it's just all over the place. Some of them are morning people, some are not, and they'd rather do the evening. Some of them are free during the day, but then their family's home at night. So it's just, it's all over the place, which I think is true for pretty much most of us. I think that there's probably some people out there, and it really depends on your niche and your ideal client and who you're trying to attract. I'm sure there's some people out there that have an audience that is pretty similar. Like let's say that you are a career coach and you work with people who want a corporate job and they want to thrive in their corporate job. Well, then those people are pretty much always going to be busy 9 to 5, and you know that, right? So like depending on who your ideal client is and how you approach it, there is a chance that there will be a clear answer and it will be the same for all of your people, but the odds of that being the case, I think, are pretty low. I think that it's just going to depend on so many different factors. And then you have to look at, there's some people that, yes, they're at work during the day, but they have a very flexible job and they're actually on their phone a lot of times. And there's people that work a very demanding job and don't have a second to look at their phone when they're at work. So, it's just, there's so many things that go into it. So I think you do want to be mindful of what seems to work for your audience, especially if you're hoping to grow your views and your engagement, particularly with something like if you're trying to go live and you want people to be there live with you, that's going to matter a lot more what time you're posting it than other types of content. So yes, it does matter what happens in the beginning when you post something. That can impact the reach, but not nearly as much as it used to. At the time I'm recording this, if you're listening to this in the future, I sincerely hope that this is not the case anymore. But right now, the algorithms are a hot mess, and half of what I'm seeing was posted multiple days, if not a week ago. So it used to matter a lot more when you made that post because people were seeing them pretty right away. I used to be able to make a post, set my phone down for 10 minutes, come back, and have a bunch of comments. That is not always the case anymore. Sometimes it is, but sometimes I come back and it has nothing, and I get in my head because I'm still so used to how it used to be, and I think, oh my gosh, this post is going to flop. No one likes this. And then I wait a few hours or the next morning and boom, here come the comments. So I feel like right now I would worry about this even less than you ever have because who even knows when people are seeing what it is that you posted. But I think, when you post good content, and what I've always tried to teach you guys is it's not about posting a million times, and it's not about that feeling of getting lucky and having people come across your content in the newsfeed. When you have really good content that is dialed in and you've figured out your ideal client and you're creating things that they want to see more of, it doesn't matter as much what time you're posting. Because if they always watch your videos and they always engage, they're pretty likely to see your future, as long as they keep doing that, they're pretty likely to see most, if not all of your videos come across their newsfeed, regardless of the time that you posted it. So a lot of times people get really hung up on what time should I be posting. And like I said, yes, it does matter. If you post something at, 11 p.m., it's pretty likely it's going to get less comments than something that was posted at 8 p.m. when more people are awake, unless you have an audience of people who are night owls, and then it might not matter. See, even when I try and give a good example, there's always those exceptions, and that's why this is such a difficult question to answer, and why it's not just just simply do this and that'll work for you and it'll work for everyone kind of answer, because it really depends on who are you looking for. And so what you can do is start to do some experiments. You can try different content types at different times. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that when you're posting at quote unquote peak times, there's more competition. So I remember when I first started going live years ago, years ago when I started going live, I remember people would say that like the peak time to go live was around 8 or 9 p.m. But at that point in time, and I had like done some video challenges, I had a lot of other friends who were doing live videos, a lot of people I was following, and I was pretty kind of immersed in that world. And I found that when I would go live at 8 p.m., I wasn't getting as many viewers because there were 10 of us, and we all kind of knew each other, and there were so many of us live at the same time that people had to pick and choose. So if I instead went live during the day when there was little other competition, and a lot of times I would go live at awkward times, like 2 p.m., and there was hardly anyone else live at that time, and people were more available to come watch me because they weren't already watching someone else, or they weren't having to make that choice. So even posting during what can sometimes be considered an off time still can have its benefits because there's less competition during those windows. You just kind of want to, keep in mind, when do I think my people are most likely to be active? But what you can do, there are a few different ways that you can check and see how many people are active at any given time. So this is always changing. But a lot of times in Messenger, you'll be able to see how many people are active right now. And a lot of times if you act like you're going to go live, you don't have to actually go live, but if you act like you're going to, it will show how many of your friends are active right now. And so you can kind of get in the habit of checking that throughout the day for a few days and notice, do there seem to be times where it's showing people are more active? If you have a group, you can actually check. Facebook will show you when your group kind of has the most activity. So you're able to check within your group if you have that. But then you can also just do trial and error. So you can try posting different content types at different times and see how they perform. But what you don't want to do here is just one video, one written post, one reel, and then see how they do. You want to do this consistently, because what can kind of confound your results here is that it's not just about written, live, reel, whatever. It's not just about the content type. It's also about what is the piece of content and do people care about what it is. So it's possible that you try going live in the morning and in the evening, and the morning one does well and the evening one does badly, and you could conclude, oh, my people like the morning better than the evening. But what really happened was that the morning one had a good topic and the evening one did not, and people just weren't into it, and that's why they didn't come. So I would try this out a few different, instead of doing just one try per time slot, I would do a few, probably three-ish, like 3 videos in the morning and then 3 videos in the evening, to try and see if there seems to be a difference in how they perform. You can also look at days of the week. One thing I will tell you is pretty consistently across the board, Friday, I think once you get into like late afternoon, evening on Friday, and then most of Saturday, especially in the summer, is a very slow time. And that's probably what I would consider to be one of the worst times to post on social media, other than like the middle of the night. So you do want to be mindful of the weekends, especially in the summer months when people are outside doing fun stuff. They just are not on social media on the weekends as much. I mean, I just had a crazy busy weekend with multiple different things to do. We're already getting into it. We're already getting in the beginning of summer, and I'm starting to have birthday parties and friend parties and just things coming up. So just keep in mind that on the weekends in the summer tends to be a pretty not ideal time to post on social media. But so you can do a little experiment, like I said, and I would try more than once for each, just to make sure you're getting good data. But then you can take a look at, was there a big difference in how they performed? And you really want to look at big difference. And if your audience is still small, I understand that, big difference might not be these big numbers for you yet. But if you tried during the morning and you tried during the evening, and 6 people watched in the morning and 7 people watched at night, like that one person difference to me should not be like a huge deciding factor. So, if there's like a clear standout, this did really well during this time, amazing. I know a lot of people who post a written post pretty early, first thing in the morning. For me, that's just not how I roll. I'm just not a morning person. I'm just never going to do that. Yes, I could write them the night before and then get up and post, but I don't know, even everything about the way that I write tends to be like, here's what I did today, or here's what I'm doing now. It's just never clicked for me personally to be an early morning post kind of person. But that can be a good time to post if it works for you, which kind of brings me to my last thing that I think you want to consider when you're deciding what are your best times to post. What's going to work for you? Because yes, you want to look at what works for your audience, but you also need to make sure that the audience that you have is the audience that you want. So sometimes we're trying to make decisions and we're trying really hard to like pull engagement out of the people that are already on our friends list, and it's just not happening. And then you're like, it must be the time. Maybe I should post here. Maybe I should post. And it's like the problem is actually the people. If you need to have the right people on your friends list following you wherever it is we're talking about in your group in order for the testing to be accurate and useful. If it's just your friends and family and you haven't really put in the work to grow your right audience of ideal clients yet, then you might be trying really hard to cater to a group of people that are never going to buy from you no matter what you do. So do keep that in mind when you're testing things. Make sure that you have the right people in your audience. And I'm not saying you can't have some of the, I'm friends with my mom on social media. I'm not saying you can't be friends. You can't have your friends and family, but you just don't want to make decisions based off of people who aren't necessarily who you're looking for when it comes to growing your business. But you really want to think about what's going to work for you, because like that example I just gave you, it could work for my audience to post super early in the morning, but it does not work for me. And at the end of the day, what works for me is the most important thing. So there's always more people out there that you can find. So maybe your audience that you have right now prefers early morning and you hate it. Well, guess what? There's other people out there who also hate early morning, and you can find them. You can continue building your audience. You're never stuck, and you never have to make yourself unhappy to try and do what you think is right or what you think is going to work for someone else, because ultimately this needs to be sustainable for you. And so that was the other thing that I found for me, was that I tend to do, if I'm doing a piece of video content and a piece of written content in the same day, typically I will do the video content in the like late morning or afternoon, and then I'll do the written content at night. And that is just how I like to create. Could I change it? Probably, but it would take a lot of effort, and I don't really feel the need to right now. For me, it just feels natural. I'm recording this. Well, actually, it's technically evening now because I had to wait for my son to go down for his nap, and he really fought it today after we had such a busy weekend. But typically, if I'm speaking, I would rather do that earlier in the day. If I'm writing, I would rather do that later in the day. And so I've leaned into that in my content, and I let myself create the type of content that I like creating when I like creating it. And I understand, and you have to remember that this is free content. Yes, we are trying to use it to grow an audience. So I'm not trying to act like it doesn't matter, right? Like content is my favorite thing. You guys know this. Well, probably branding, but I talk about content a lot. And so I think content is important. But at the same time, if the content you're creating is free, you don't need to make yourself miserable creating free content for people, okay? You need to do what's going to work for you and what's going to be sustainable long term. If you are killing yourself trying to get up and do this 6 a.m. video because you know someone else who does it and it works for them and so you think you should try it, but you hate it, that is not going to be sustainable for you. Or if you somehow manage to force yourself to keep it up long term, you're going to wake up one day and say, I hate this. Why did I do this? Remember, you're in control. You're building your business. You get to decide what your business looks like. And so make sure that you're not building a business that makes you miserable. Make sure that you're building a business that makes you happy and that you're going to enjoy keeping up with. So for me, trying to post really early in the morning, by the time I manage to drag myself out of bed and then I do my workout and then I drink some coffee and like by the time I even think about possibly wanting to post, it's just, that's not what I want to do. But if you're a morning person, you might feel the complete opposite. You might say, I absolutely love. I remember one time I was listening to a day in the life, like, here's how I run my business from a very successful person. And she's like, I get up at 5. Like, it was literally like my hell, the way she described her morning, but she loved it. And that's great. She was like, I get up at 5, I shower, that takes 10 minutes. I go to my class, that takes 40 minutes. And then I come home, I eat the same breakfast every day. And then I sit down and I write for 20 minutes. And then I do this, and I do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is just not how I feel in the morning, even a little bit. So we all have to kind of figure out, how do you create content in a way that you will enjoy? Now, the one thing I will tell you, this is the one thing that I sometimes have people who relate to me. They're night owls like me, and they enjoy writing at night. There has to be a line. Like, you should decide a cutoff point where if your post is not posted by a certain point, you should save it for the next day. Because that is the one thing I've seen happen with people, where they spend all their whole evening stressing over writing this amazing post, and then they finally get it posted, but now it's like 11:45 at night and no one sees it. And it, like, if you would have just saved it for the next day and posted it at a better time, it could have worked really well. So I think that's kind of the one, like, within any reasonable time to post, don't stress about it. But if once you get to like if it's like 3 a.m., if you're, if you're like really in the wee hours, if you're starting to really hit that point where people are in bed or it just seems very unlikely that they're going to be able to engage with you, then I would not post during that time. But as long as it's any time from like 8 a.m. until probably about 10 p.m., I say post when it works for you and play around with it and find those times that seem to work even better, and then figure out what's going to work best for yourself and be sustainable for you, like I said, because you have to create your best content. My brain, by the end of the night, if I'm trying to do a video at 9 p.m., I can do it, but it feels much more difficult for me, and I know that it's not my best work as if I do it earlier in the day when my brain is a little more fresh for that kind of work. So really just kind of figuring out what's going to work best for you. What type of content do you like creating when? What does your schedule look like? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? And experimenting with it. I think that this is another one of those things where as an entrepreneur, you have to make peace with someone not telling you what to do. There we go. I was like, how do I want to phrase this? But no one is coming to tell you what to do. And no one is coming to save you. And many people can't ever break out of this. They just get stuck in the, well, I don't know. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know. Guess what? We're all overwhelmed and none of us know. We're just doing it anyway. We're just trying stuff. We're seeing what works. We're trying more stuff. We're seeing what works. And we're tweaking as we go. So do not get stuck in the, well, I need someone to tell me the perfect time. If you truly need me to tell you, post at 8 p.m., okay? I don't, like, you're making this so much harder than it needs to be. Figure out what times work for you, play around with when your audience seems to respond to it, and above all else, build the business that you want to have, creating the content that you enjoy creating in a way that is sustainable for you. Okay, so maybe not exactly what you were expecting from this episode, but I hope that it has helped you. So many people get really stuck in this question. And by the way, if you asked me this question in the past, this is not meant to like make you feel badly for having that question. It is a perfectly valid question. I just wanted to help you understand why you're kind of looking at it the wrong way and why there's not an easy answer to that question. But I don't mean whatsoever to make you feel badly or like you messed up if you've asked this question or felt this way. We all have. It's a perfectly normal thing to think there's probably a good time. Like, I wonder if I should be posting at a better time. So you were completely fine for asking the question. It's just, it doesn't have that simple of an answer. So I hope this has given you some stuff to think about. And your action step for this week is to go try it out. Figure out what are your types of content. So for me, it's written posts. I do live videos and I do reels are my main content types. And so figuring out what are different times that I could try. So if I were doing this, I would say, okay, live video. This week, I'm going to try going live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm going to do it in the morning. And then next week, I'm going to keep everything the same except the time. And this is important if you don't have a science background, to make sure that when you're experimenting, you're doing it in the proper scientific way. Because if you say, okay, next week I'm going to do Tuesday and Thursday evening, now we've changed days and we've changed evening. So I'm not saying that this is a bad thing in terms of figuring out what works for you. But if you are trying to just collect data and purely see based like what times your audience responds best, then you need to make sure that the following week you do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday again, but then change the time. And then the following week again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but change the time again, so that everything else is staying consistent but the time. But pick your content types and do some experimenting and see if you notice a difference in the engagement that you get depending on the time that you post. And if you do, I would love for you to tell me. So please feel free to shoot me a message, send me an email, post in my Facebook group. I would love to hear if you do this experiment. I would really love to hear which times turned out to be the best for you. I hope this episode inspires you to go take action on something you have been overthinking. As much as I wish you could, you cannot think your way to success, so promise me you're going to go take some action today. Head over to overthinkingentrepreneur.com to find all the cool stuff I've made for you over the years, like my free guide to getting more social media engagement and my Facebook group, Dynamite Entrepreneurs, which has a free course on social media basics.